Hello everybody. So I just wanted to make this short video about these mudguards. These are SKS Veloflexx 65mm. I believe they come in 55 or 50mm as well. And the reason why I'm making this video is because as I was looking around to try and find some mudguards for this frame, this is my winter bike, and as you can tell, it does not have any mounts for mudguards. It does not have any eyelets, and because of that I had to kind of delve into the world of clamp on mudguards, which essentially use different types of clamps. Some of them require P-clips, some of them use rubber clamps, and some require zip ties. And when I was looking around, I found quite a lot of different types of clampable mudguards, but one thing I found was that a lot of the ones that were available were primarily more performance based ones. So we're talking like ass saver type ones where they don't really offer a whole lot of coverage. In other words, they're just designed to stop the muck from spraying up onto your back. But to find some that had more coverage was actually not super easy, and that's when I stumbled over the Veloflexx here. And so I'll give you guys a bit of a rundown of how this is attached and some of my thoughts about it. So first, I will say that I was a bit wary when I noticed that it said that these were all attached with essentially rubber mounts, because I wasn't sure how that really would be able to provide the kind of rigidity that I would like for off-road riding. But as you can tell, I've got it set up here. We've got the mount here, which is essentially just a piece of rubber that's curved so that it'll fit the curvature of your seat stay. And then we've got a rubber strip which hooks on the other side and wraps around and then tightens. And in order to adjust the angle of the mount, all we do is undo this tiny little hex key here, hex bolt, sorry, and then we can adjust the angle, and that allows you to set it up for any kind of seat stay angle. Up here we've got another bolt. This is for adjustment of the actual stay, so if you loosen this you can pull out the stay and push it inwards, and that allows you to set the position in relation to the tyre in the rear here. What I had to do was I had to take them out and cut about maybe 1-2 centimeters off using a bolt cutter. It was very easy, and then you just slide it back in and you can get that perfect gap that you want. So that all works fine. As you can tell, it's a single stay mudguard. A lot of people do tend to prefer the dual stay type, and I do understand why, because obviously they are often a bit more rigid. But what I will say is that I find that this particular setup works totally fine because the stay is incredibly thick. This is not by any means a flimsy stay like what you normally associate with SKS. This is very thick, very rigid, and I've got no complaints there. And as you can tell, I mentioned that I was a bit worried about the fact that these are rubber mounts, but they are incredibly rigid as well, because the rubber does create a bit of friction against the frame, and that's really not moving a whole lot. Then we get up here to the bridge, and as you can tell, I'm using a Velcro strip wrapped around the bridge. Now if you look online at the retailer websites and on SKS's website, you'll find that actually you're meant to have, on the rear there, you're meant to have this bit there. This is a little plastic mount that's detachable, and as you can tell, I've swapped the places of them, And the reason for that I'll get into a bit later as well, but it has to do with the fact that I don't run a suspension fork, I run a ratchet fork. But as you can tell, I've just wrapped that around there and it keeps it nice and tight. You've got a cutout here, which, oh, it's kind of gone into the frame there, but there's a cutout that usually sits right against the seat stay. Down at the seat tube, it uses a clamp which you just pry open, slide it over the seat tube, and then there's a rubber strip that connects to the hook. Now what I will say is I think this can fit to just about any frame. Certainly any oversized mountain bike seat tube would be fine. I will say though that if you have a more old school classic steel frame with quite a small diameter seat tube, then you might have to shim it. I don't see that being a problem, by the way, because it's not the most crucial thing, but I will say that if you have a very narrow, slim seat tube, I could see that potentially you wouldn't be able to tighten it quite enough, but I don't know. And then from there we move to the front, where, as you can tell, we've got this mount that is actually meant to go in the rear, but I've decided to put it here because I don't have a suspension fork. And down by the stay we've got the same setup as we do on the rear. Now one thing that is actually, in my opinion, a bit problematic has to do with the fact that the way they've designed it is so that all of the front is meant to have Velcro strips holding everything in place, and then the rear is all rubber strips. And I don't really like that. I personally would like to use the rubber strips instead, because I do have a feeling that over time, as you're riding through various different types of weather, as you get grime and mud and whatnot into the Velcro, I do think it's going to lose some of its gripping power, and so that is something to consider. And another thing that I do find quite annoying is that they didn't add two of these, because the way I see it, to make this a lot more versatile, it would make sense to include two of these so you could use this on non-suspension frames a lot easier. Because the way it's actually meant to be set up is that the Velcro strip, which is on the rear, is meant to go on the front and wrap around the bracket, which is on the suspension fork. I'll put a picture right here of what that's meant to look like. And so if they were to make an iteration to this mudguard set, I don't know if they will, because these mudguards have been around forever now, but if they were to make an iteration to it, I would definitely go ahead and replace all the Velcro with rubber strips, because they just provide more friction, more rigidity. And I would go ahead and include two of those brackets and have one on the rear, because as you can tell, the big issue that I have is, in order to get the mudguard down towards the tyre, to get the to kind of narrow down that gap, in order to do that I've had to use a foam shim. So basically I've taken a foam grip and I've cut it into a little chunk, and I've put them inside one another, and that pushes that mudguard down a bit. And in my opinion, that's just not as ideal, because you don't have as much control over it. Whereas if you had one of these, which essentially is just, you know, it's just these arms that attach and you can slide it up and down. If you had one of those on the rear as well, it would be, you know, really, really adjustable, and as I said, a lot more versatile. But I will say that all hope is not lost, because I did look around online and I did find that you can actually get the bracket that's in the front there and the rubber strips individually, so you can buy them from the shops, and that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to go ahead and get one of those plastic brackets, put that in the rear so I can adjust everything there, and then I'm going to replace the strips that you see here, the Velcro ones. I'm going to replace those with rubber strips. But overall, I'm really, really impressed. with the quality of these. The plastic seems really sturdy. Whether or not it's going to hold up over time, time will tell, because obviously, although I'm saying that the plastic is really sturdy, that's not necessarily always a positive thing, because really hard plastic has a tendency to crack rather than just bend. And some of the slightly flimsier, thinner mudguards typically never really break. So whether or not it's going to hold up, we'll see. But in terms of rigidity, in terms of coverage, I think it's actually pretty decent. I would have liked the mudguards to be a bit longer, especially in the front. I would have liked that mud flap to be a bit further down, and also maybe a bit more down towards the seat tube on the rear. But overall, it's keeping me dry and it's doing the job, and it feels really rigid. I've been riding over rocky terrain with no issues at all. I've had mud clogged up inside the mudguards with no issues. So yeah, I think this is definitely, if you're looking for a fat tire mudguard set that's easy to install, that is, you know, easily movable from bike to bike, then this is definitely the way to go, because taking all this apart takes absolutely no time, and once you've got it kind of dialed in, it stays put. So yeah, all in all, the Veloflexx, the SKS Veloflexx 65mm is definitely worth your money, and with a few adjustments and a few extra parts, you can make this even more versatile. And again, time will tell whether or not it's going to last, but I have a feeling that it will.